Caleb, theist, he, him pronouns in Ohio, wants to talk about some teleology, it sounds like, but also has a question for us. So, hey, Caleb, you're chatting with JMike and SR. What is your question?
So, first off, before I get to the point that I wanted to make, and I do understand that I am far from the first person to present to you guys this argument. I know you've probably heard it many times, and I'm not saying that I am the only person who's going to represent the argument right, but I do think that it is possible to present an argument in the wrong way or else with lack of information or whatever. So I've been studying this stuff for a little bit now, and so I just thought I would call and present it. But before that, like I said, I want to ask the question, what would you say, how do you come to the conclusion that you think there is no God? Like, most likely there is no God.
Yeah. JMike, do you want to go first?
Yeah, it might be I don't know, because I don't know if SR is like what the credence level. I think you might just want to focus on not affirming the proposition to be true, right? Which I think is kind of the what I think is more fruitful to understand someone's view about why I should believe in God. So going from two different polar opposite points kind of definitely confuses things because it's hard to convince each other. But the reason why I think gods do not exist, from my view, it's kind of like a cumulative case, I guess. I know a lot of people don't really like that term, but I don't think that minds are fundamental. I think that there's really good evidence to suggest that minds require third generation stars and planetary disks, and this whole process of stellar nucleosynthesis where you get, elements as heavy up to iron or whatever, right? Supernovae for heavier elements. So for me, like, there are no minds of the following, which exist sans the existence of third generation stars. So I have like motivations there, or independent motivations to think that's true. But on the kind of bigger metaphysical picture, if someone's just like, well, you don't know, maybe there could be a fundamental mind. Well, now what I want to do is kind of compare those views on theoretical virtues. So I'm looking at things like unification, fitness of data, and I think a lot of the virtues end up just boiling down into two considerations: simplicity versus the explanatory breadth and depth you get out of it. So from my view, the reason why I would be like, I guess you want to call a naturalist or something. I usually use like an indifference kind of hypothesis, that the world is just indifferent and doesn't have intention. The way that I want to go about that is pointing out that the commitments that you have to take on theism are massive. And if you want to take those commitments, your view is not going to be simpler. And so the work you have to do is to show why, someone like myself has to adopt those commitments to explain the world around me. So once we agree upon something that we agree about, like say we think that the beginning of the universe, like there was a beginning of the universe, we agree on that. What best explains it? This theistic kind of hypothesis or this like indifference hypothesis that I have? From my view, when we do this for any point of agreement, this indifference principle is going to win out every time, because I'm making less commitments. I'm not inflating my ontological economy, and I'm getting this benefit of at least equally explaining the data, if not better explaining the data. And so from that view, when I figure out what view is most parsimonious, then it just falls out for free that, I'm an atheist, because atheism comes for free on this view. So.
And the reason, if you can't tell, Caleb, the reason why I let JMike go first is because he does such a wonderful job of explaining that. And yeah, man, I'm just willing to just ride those coattails for a second. Be like, that's pretty much. Yeah, I think that's where pretty much both of us are coming from in general, right? Yeah. So yeah, please go ahead, Caleb.
Anyway, so I didn't want that to be, I just wanted to ask the question. I just wanted to hear where you guys were coming from. And so now I kind of want to get on to like my points here, like the argument.
Yeah, sure. I will say, can I say one thing? Caleb, can I say one thing real quick? That the reason why I just want to point this out, just for the sake of someone calling in the future, that if you think this is like motivated towards some type of naturalism, I was a property dualist. I was like a non-naturalist. Yeah. So I came from one position to another position. So, and through that process. So I just want to point that out there. It's not just like, oh, okay, I agree with that. It's that like, oh, that fits an already held belief. It was that process led me to my belief. Right. So I just want to point that out.
All right. So I just want to first see if we can agree. that evidence is just an available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true beyond a reasonable doubt. Can we agree with that?
I couldn't really hear you. It was choppy on me.
Say it again. I'm comfortable with that definition. It's not my preferred one always, but I don't see any problems off the rip. But say it again for us so that JMike also gets it.
Okay, so I was just wondering if we could agree at least that evidence is just an available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true beyond a reasonable doubt.
Kind of not really. I mean, I'm looking at evidence as something that's expected upon a hypothesis.
Yeah. And I like the definition of, and I think we're all in a similar place. I like the definition of exclusively concordant with or positively indicative of one, conclusion. So, I mean, I think we're all in kind of the same vein enough to be able to move forward. Do you feel that that's fair, Caleb? Do you feel like we're all in the same kind of neighborhood there?
What do you mean again? Can you explain that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Do you want to give yours again, JMike, and then I'll give mine, or I can give mine first?
Yeah, I was just giving kind of a loose understanding of it. Like what I expect, what evidence is supposed to be doing is like it's expected upon a hypothesis. So if I have some like a novel prediction about like, I don't know, I don't really know anything about like astrophysics or something, but like, feel like some type of fusion of elements or something like that. I can make some prediction, go out in the world and confirm that at least with a high degree, and that like find something that would be expected upon that, or like like you might think might be like cosmic microwave background radiation, is what we would expect on this hypothesis of a Big Bang, or right. So something like that. But yeah, I mean the whole like incontrovertible thing. I don't know. I don't really, because like evidence can be like something like there's a footprint that's evidence for Bigfoot. Like it is evidence for Bigfoot. It's just like, is it good evidence? Is it,
Yeah. And we'll just stick with that one. We don't need to muddy it any further. I mean, do you feel like what JMike just said is close enough, fair enough that we can move forward? We're all kind of on the same page, good enough. We know what we're talking about when we say evidence.
Yeah, I mean, I want to get to the point. I want this to be too long. Anyway, so do you guys agree that if a belief or idea has a low chance of being true, then we shouldn't accept it, right? I actually heard you say with the last call, you said that you shouldn't believe it when you were that last caller, Olivia. You were talking about how you think that for the prophecy thing or whatever has doesn't have a likelihood of being true. It's unlikely to be true.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on what you mean by that, because when I say the likelihood that something is true, really what I'm doing there is just trying to give a little nod to that you can't have 100% certainty thing, right? But the evidence available leads me to this conclusion of whether or not something is likely to be true. So like the fact that something isn't likely to be true is not why we shouldn't believe it. It's the evidence that leads us to the conclusion, that leads us to the belief that something is unlikely to be true. That's what it is, right? Does that make sense? Like it's unlikely to be the case that particles just pop in and out of existence, considering the fact that everything's made up of particles and my water bottle's not popping in and out of existence, but it is. Like it is true.
Yeah, you have like this prior probability of thinking
right.
It's not likely, but that's what the evidence is supposed to do. It's supposed to overcome this kind of like really massive, like unlikely, prior probability, so that you can achieve that in that kind of a posterior sense.
Yeah. What do you say to that?
Yeah, but I mean, I was just saying that, like, say if based on the evidence we come to the conclusion that a belief or idea has a very low chance of being true, it's very unlikely to be true based on the evidence, and we shouldn't accept it because it's unlikely to be true based on that evidence,
Yeah, and
let's say something has a 1 in a million chance.
Well, yeah, but so again, that isn't right. I think where you were going is exactly why I tried to make this distinction, which is the fact that something has a 1 in a million chance is completely irrelevant. It has nothing to do with whether or not it's true. 1 in a million, 1 in 5, 1 in bazillion. It doesn't matter. That is unimportant too about whether or not we should accept this belief, this conclusion, right? That is interesting it's interesting that it only has a 1 in a million chance of being like this, but it doesn't actually factor into whether or not
so it is true. I have a feeling that what you said there is going to be very important to what he's going to get to here.
I think so. I hope so. Is that fair, Caleb? Do you see where we're coming from?
I mean, no. I mean, not really. I
anticipated you to push back. I think your argument's going to depend on it. Can I just predict what you're going to do?
Hang on. Go ahead, JMike, and then Caleb, give us your thoughts.
Are you going to like make this kind of like, and I could be wrong, but I'm just predicting like you don't want to accept this because you want to point out like some astronomical probability issue, and you want to get to teleology that like some protein or something needs to be designed, and that this like 1 in a million chance doesn't have good evidence because of like the odds. That's what I think you want to do. Am I right? Is that like a decent prediction?
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of close. Not really about the protein thing, but could I just kind of like move on? And once you realize you're right, then you can start ranting.
Sure. Go ahead.
It's important flag to point because I see where you two are going to butt heads.
That's where I was, I was thinking that was probably the route we were going to.
This is my point, by the way, that I say that these kind of arguments usually don't work if you give out like this argument to SR. Or you give this argument, you just identified the premise that you both are not going to accept, and you're not going to make progress on the argument. But we can go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so the teleological argument uses the apparent design that we observe in nature as evidence for God's existence. The first premise states, and it's not being applied to the universe yet, it's just talking about something very simple that we all observe, that every design has a designer. Like I know this phone that I'm using to call in on had a designer. The electronics that you guys are using had a designer, the house had a designer, we don't have to go, just etc. And so that's true. We don't have to really talk about that. The second premise is the one I think will really
built into the concept of a design that it applies designed.
Right. It's kind of a tautology, but yeah.
Not just like a tautology. Good.
Yeah.
Well, second premise is when it applies that to the universe, and it says that the universe has highly complex design. And so that's the one I want to be focusing on and trying to give evidence for. And so the conclusion, if both of those things are true, and the teleological argument doesn't say which God this is, because I am a Christian.
Sure.
I don't know, maybe sometime in the future I will call back and say why I think that this is the Christian God, but that is not why I called. Before we start talking about what designer is this, we first have to show beyond reasonable doubt that there even is a designer.
Me and SR aren't worried about that.
We're not gonna push back on that aspect of it, man, because honestly, JMike called it. I mean, he's right. Ultimately, that second premise where you say like, well, all of this universe has, this highly complex design. I'm going to say most likely this is how it's going to go, Caleb. I'm going to go like, hey, man, I don't really think so. I don't think the universe is designed, man. And you're going to say like, oh, yeah, it is. And I'll go, oh, okay, what's the evidence? What's the indication? And you'll say like, man, it's super crazy high, improbability that, life would happen or proteins or stars or the universe. And because of that crazy probability, it had to have been designed. And I'm just going to go back to what I said just a second ago, which is like, no, that's not why a crazy low probability is not the reason that we shouldn't accept something. It's the information that gets us to the conclusion that it is a low probability. And then what we should say is not that it's not true. It's just that it has a low probability, right? So that's ultimately where the crux of the issue is, I think.
Yeah, and like I said, this doesn't even necessarily say what God or designer this would be. It just says that it was.
We don't worry about that.
Based on the evidence I'm going to try to give. Yeah.
Yeah, we just want to hear the evidence. We're not worried about that. Yeah, you don't. Yeah, right. I'm just telling you, don't worry about that. Like, you don't have to worry or like, feel like we're going to press you on. Oh, you're really a Christian or something. Like, we don't care about that. What we care about is the good reasons to believe that there is this fundamental mind that creates the external world and all this stuff. Like, that's what we're interested in. So,
why? What is the reasoning that you have come to the conclusion for that second premise that the universe does have this highly complicated design element to it? What is that?
Okay, so what I would say the evidence is for that would be, and this is among other things, but the Anthropic principle, which is just pretty much the just I would say, mounting evidence that the universe shows highly complex design. So the anthropic principle is made up of well over 120 anthropic constants, which are highly precise, interdependent environmental conditions. Things like
you don't have to give us all the. Hang on just a second. You don't have to go through the individual bullet points of what the different things for the anthropic. We get it, man. We get what you're saying, which is there's all these things about the world around us that we all agree are true. Gravity is definitely a thing. 9.8 meters per second squared is the force that gravity exerts on an object free falling to Earth. We're with you, man. We're with you on that. We agree. Those things are true. Strong force, weak force, all that good shit. Most likely, if I'm wrong, please correct me, Caleb, but most likely what you're going to say is all of those things together are incredibly highly specific, and changing any one of them arbitrarily would fuck the whole system, thus giving indication that the system had to be designed. Is that basically where you're going?
Yes, and also I forgot, this is something major that I forgot to ask the call screener. And so,
hold on. Let's not worry about that. Let's go. We can go over this because, like, the probability thing is just going to shoot yourself in the foot, in my opinion. Because, like, do you agree that God could have like an infinite amount of desires that he could realize?
Sorry, I got distracted for a moment. What were you saying?
Do you think that God has an infinite amount of desires that he could actualize? Like, he could actualize the universe where just marbles pop out, or he could just actualize the world with just SR talking to a bunch of SRs all the time about SR stuff, right? He could create the world where universes just collapse within on themselves to create a universe where there's really no universe, right? So do you agree that God, as like an omnipotent being or a very powerful being, could actualize any one of these desires?
Okay, yeah. So first off, to answer that, I would first say that it is impossible.
It's just a yes or a no.
Well, no, but you see, here's the thing, and this is one thing that you guys, I feel like,
just
really
say yes and then because
a lot, which is we don't have to have you say we don't have to have a yes or no answer. We can be fine with I don't know, and I don't know everything about the being.
I'm actually muted.
Okay, but hold on. You can say I don't know. Yeah, just answer, Caleb. Like, we're gonna give you time to explain stuff, but sometimes people will go down routes that it just doesn't make sense for us to waste anybody's time. We don't want to waste your time. We don't want to waste our time. We don't want to waste the audience's time, man. And so, if you agree with something, just say you agree, and then we'll let you explain a little. And if you don't know, just say you don't know, and then we can go down that route. But just give us a straight answer. Yes, yes, no, I don't know. What?
Yeah, my bad. I should have said yes, no, I don't know, because that is a live option to you. I'm not just saying that now. It's totally a live option to you. So do you think that God could have, like, it's either the case that God has, like, more than one potential desire he could actualize, or just only one possible desire, right, that he could actualize?
Right, like that's a dichotomy, right? It has to be one or the other there, right?
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing: are you saying, like, could God create a universe any way that he wants to, any way that he desires?
He could desire. God could desire a universe. Could desire to actualize any set of constants for a universe that he desires, right?
I mean,
he's not forced. He's not forced to create
them. More toward.
Do you think he's forced to create them? Your options is he's forced, or he has the free will to create whichever ones he wants. Which one is it?
Well, no, and you see, I don't see how this is relevant to my.
It's going to be relevant. It's going to be relevant. It is going to be relevant.
Yeah,
I promise
it's the exact same construction that you're using to talk about the universe. So
I'm literally taking your line of reasoning and going to apply it. Just wait. So do you think that God is forced to create?
You're asking me this question about.
Just tell me yes, no, or I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why this is difficult. Do you think that God has free will to create other constants? Yes or no?
Didn't I just tell you I don't know, though? And you were
okay. So you don't know, but is it a true dichotomy? What JMike was just laying out, that either God does have all of these other possibilities of how the universe could be constructed, or he does not, and there is only the singular possibility. Do you agree that that is a true dichotomy? It has to be one or the other.
What does this have to do with God's existence?
This is really important.
Just stop worrying about that, Caleb. We're having a conversation. This isn't a fucking video that has a goddamn conclusion already. None of us know how this fucking conversation goes. Just engage with us, man. Just be a person for 5 seconds. Fuck.
Is it a dichotomy or not? You don't have to say you know which one, because I'm going to spell out the problem on each. That's why I'm glad that SR is doing this, so we can stick to that topic.
Okay, so there's a couple of things I have to say now, and they were drastically changed after what you just said.
I'm literally going to fucking drop you from the call if you don't fucking know how to answer a question. Seriously, I'm getting irritated. I'm like, seriously getting irritated. Really? I'm just going to hang up and then tell the audience what I'm thinking, right? How about that? Because I'm still going to get what I want to say out. I'm trying to have you part of this conversation. So just stop moving on and just answer, please. Like you started this whole thing answering, and we specified and clarified, and we said yes, but let me give this kind of an analogy. That's fine. If you want to say, like, I'm gonna answer yes or no, let me say this thing quick and I'll say yes. Just switch it around. Just say yes because, no because. I'm not trying to prevent you from getting, like, elucidating on your point. I'm just trying to know what part of the question you're answering. That's it. So do you agree that there's a true dichotomy there? That's either like God can create any he could actualize other constants, or he's just forced to create those constants, assuming that God is creating constants.
Okay, I wanted to ask for permission really quick for something. There's something I forgot to do with the call screener. So I have a podcast, and I was going to.
I don't care about your fucking podcast,
and we're not going to let you talk about it. And to be honest,
podcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it to you, JMike. I'm supposed to be in the driver's seat, but I'm gonna give you the option, man. Do we bring him back on, or we just let him go for the day? Because Caleb, you've called in a bunch. We've had decent conversations. I think perfect. We drop him. Cool.
Yeah, I'm just gonna explain
please
say it. He's not gonna engage with this. It's not important, but this is the issue. So, like, if your whole issue is with this probability thing, because this is the whole idea, is that there's this giant space of possibilities or probability where you have the constants of the universe being some way. Now, in that giant array, the way that they could be, there's like one or very few that allow for life to come about, right? Just not good life, maybe not bad life, just life, just having the possibility of life, right? That's what theists want to get, what they want to say. Now, here's the problem. If he thinks that God can only create like he has one necessary set of desires, and that just, he has no choice, he's forced, well, then the constants are necessary, right? Then in themselves they're necessary, which would a view a naturalist could take. They could just say, oh, the fine-tuned constants are necessary, they had to be that way. You're adding this extra God, why not add 20-50 million more gods to it, right? It seems like just totally, like, just principle, like, just take Occam's razor, very simple, right? There's no reason to add those. Now, in that sense, if he says that, you just shave off the necessary God, because you already have a necessary universe with necessary constants. Didn't need the God to get there. Now, the other route, which is the way he wanted to go, is to say that, the route that a lot of theists will like to go is that, yeah, God is omnipotent, meaning he could actualize any set of desires that are logically possible. Great, but think about the probability space of that. The probability space of God landing on this one world with life, as opposed to the ones with marbles or with SRs talking to each other, right, is immensely improbable that we land on that one out of the infinite amount of constants. So all you've done by trying to arrest this brute contingency, right, this thing that could have been otherwise, but we don't have an explanation on naturalism, we insert God. But then when you do that, the same problem ends up popping its head in your view, that now we have to, by parity of reasoning, since we've invoke the designer to design the finely tuned constants, and now we have these finely tuned desires that pick out the finely tuned constants. We need another designer to design those desires, which are finely tuned, to pick out the finely tuned constants, and we have to do that ad infinitum. So, bad argument if you're going to rest it on the probability space, because it's going to come bite you in the butt. Promise you.
Yep. I am very, very glad, very, very glad we got that out finally, because it is so, there's other things too to push back on the teleology of it all, folks. Absolutely there is. I'm sure JMike and I there's clips of us playing right now on a stream that is us talking about this, and those are wonderful too. But the one that JMike just laid out right there is so chef's kiss beautiful,